May 1945, Northern Germany. The war had ended, but the habit of command was still alive. Lisa Wolff stood outside a wire gate with her hands visible and her face hard, refusing to give the Americans a clean look at fear. A sergeant walked the line, counted heads and wrote numbers on a clipboard. When he pointed at her and spoke a number instead of a name, Lisa stayed silent. He marked something anyway and waved her through. She kept her pride and paid for it by being noticed. Inside the camp, rows of low barracks sat on packed dirt. Rules were posted in German and English. Line up, obey orders, no gatherings, no tools. Lisa read punishment and decided she would not volunteer for it. Then she met the other fence. Prisoners. Wire could lock your body, but the barracks could lock your choices. Frau Kessler, older and sharp-voiced, set herself up as authority the first hour Lisa entered the barracks. She spoke in the tone of someone who missed having a uniform. "No favors, no smiles," she said. "They soften you, then they own you." The women who nodded looked relieved to have something simple again. Lisa nodded too, because being outside the group felt like stepping into a second kind of danger. At roll call, the guards called numbers again. Kessler refused to answer, and the women around her copied the silence. The guard shouted, then signaled. 2 men dragged Kessler out of line and locked her away for the day. The women stood rigid, eyes forward, refusing to look like they cared. The punishment was clean and procedural, which made it worse. It did not look like cruelty, it looked like policy. When Kessler returned at dusk, shaking but triumphant, she turned the punishment into proof. "They need you to bend," she told them. "So don't." She announced the next order. Refuse labor details, refuse to help the victors with anything. The speech gave the barracks something to hold on to, a hard edge in a softening world. It also made every meal and every task into a loyalty test that Lisa would have to pass under Kessler's eyes. The next morning, the guards herded them to a scrap pile near the perimeter. Rifles stayed slung, but the muzzles pointed in directions that made choices disappear. Lisa lifted boards and rusted metal because hesitation would be interpreted as defiance. Kessler watched from the side, collecting names of women who worked too smoothly. Lisa did the labor and felt dirty for it, and when she returned to the barracks, Kessler's look made that dirt feel permanent. Kessler answered with a hunger strike. She shoved her tin cup away at breakfast and demanded the others do the same. Lisa joined because she could not bear the stare she would earn if she ate. By afternoon, her head pounded and she moved like her bones were heavier. The guards did not shout. They just watched. That calm made Lisa angrier because it meant the camp believed it could outlast them. The camp responded by rewarding the women who ate with tiny extras in full view of the starving. A second spoon of soup, a cigarette butt, a warmer place in line. The rewards were small enough to deny and large enough to fracture trust. In the barracks, whispers started. Who ate? Who lied? Who would sell the others out to get a crust? Kessler called the eaters traitors. The eaters called Kessler suicidal. Lisa tried to stay invisible, and invisibility did not spare her from suspicion. On the 3rd day, Annie collapsed near the latrine trench. She was younger than Lisa, thin enough that her wrists looked like sticks. Lisa and another woman hauled her inside, while a guard watched with bored eyes, as if women falling was just maintenance. Kessler called the collapse proof that the camp was pressured. Lisa saw the opposite. The camp could wait longer than bodies could. That night, Annie grabbed Lisa's sleeve and whispered that she would rather die than be made into an example. Her voice was small and steady, which frightened Lisa more than tears would have. Lisa told her to drink water, to breathe, to hold on for one more day, because one more day was the only promise Lisa could afford. Annie tried to break the next morning. She harmed herself in a way that turned the whole barracks into witnesses. A medic rushed in and stopped it, and the camp reacted as if Annie had attacked them. Bunks searched, pockets emptied, anything sharp confiscated. Annie was taken to isolation. Despair had become another charge. The women were left with the message that even trying to exit the system was still the system's property. Kessler seized the moment to harden the barracks. "Weakness spreads," she said. She ordered the women to cut off anyone who ate, anyone who cried, anyone who looked relieved when the guards left. Relief itself became suspicious. Lisa learned to keep her face still even when her stomach twisted. Around that time, Lisa noticed a guard who did not fit the others. He was tall, dark-skinned, careful with his posture as if sudden movement could be punished. Other soldiers spoke to him with clipped commands and a personal edge. Lisa did not know his name yet, only that he seemed to carry two kinds of vigilance at once: vigilance over prisoners and vigilance over his own side. On Friday, the notice board did not post a suggestion. It posted an order: supervised weekend morale activities, attendance as directed, translated and stamped like a program. Kessler called it a trap and ordered everyone to refuse. The barracks agreed because agreement was safety. Saturday, the guards marched them to the field anyway. A white sergeant held a bat and glove like props. The dark-skinned guard held a white ball and said one word, slow and plain: "Throw." Lisa did not move. The sport was foreign, and the offer felt like bait. The sergeant stepped toward Lisa, anger rising, and for a second Lisa braced for violence. The dark-skinned guard moved between them without touching the sergeant. He spoke low and fast. The sergeant spat into the dirt and turned away. Lisa stayed standing, unhit, and watched the guard absorb the anger like a debt he had learned to pay. The guard turned back to the women and tried again with gestures instead of orders, demonstrating a simple throw with exaggerated slowness that invited laughter. A younger woman grabbed the ball and threw wildly. It bounced twice and rolled. The guard laughed once, big and unforced, and a couple girls laughed back before remembering where they were. The sound of laughter in the camp yard felt like an illegal object. Lisa hated how quickly it tempted them. When the recreation period ended, Lisa marched back to the barracks with her face hard, already anticipating the internal reckoning. Kessler held a trial that night. She demanded names of anyone who smiled. She threatened to report them to camp authorities herself, framing it as loyalty. Lisa said nothing. Silence did not protect her. It only made Kessler watch her longer. Lisa went to sleep understanding that the wire fence was not the only thing that could cut. The hunger strike faded into exhaustion and resentment. Some women ate again and lied about it. Kessler promised another strike and started counting who was still worthy. The camp tightened searches and moved loud women into isolation for small infractions. Annie returned from the shed with a bandaged arm and eyes that looked older than her face. Lisa felt the cold truth. Kessler's purity demanded sacrifices, and the camp was happy to take them. Annie leaned close on the next Saturday and whispered sabotage. Throw the ball at a guard's face by accident, swing the bat wide, and start a fight. Violence tempted Lisa because it would make everything simple again. Enemy, strike, consequence. She pictured rifles, dogs, and the public humiliation used on failed escapees. "No," Lisa whispered. Annie's contempt landed like a slap, and Lisa paid for restraint with her standing in the barracks. Mid-week, two women from another barracks tried to slip under a loosened section of wire during a work detail. They were caught within minutes and dragged back, bruised and torn. The camp assembled everyone and made the escapees stand at attention while an officer read new rules. It was discipline by theater. No shouting, no blood on the ground, just bodies displayed as lessons. Lisa watched and felt the old instinct to strike rise again because the camp was turning fear into routine. The next day on a kitchen detail, a woman Lisa barely knew snapped. She grabbed a pot handle and lunged toward a guard as if she meant to strike him. It was clumsy and desperate, more a scream than a plan. The guard stepped back, another guard pinned her arms, and it ended in seconds. The camp did not beat her in public. It punished the group. It cancelled the next meal for the entire barracks and posted a new rule treating any tool as a weapon. Lisa watched hunger get used as discipline and understood why violence kept returning as an idea. It felt honest. But the bill always came due on someone weaker. That same day, Lisa saw the dark-skinned guard being corrected by a white corporal. The corporal snapped at him for standing wrong, for moving slow, for letting prisoners get ideas. The guard answered, "Yes, sir," and kept his eyes forward. When the corporal walked away, the guard's jaw tightened once, then smoothed. Lisa stared, unsettled. In Germany, hierarchy had been sold as natural law. Here was a victor still being kicked into place, proof that a uniform did not erase what the world decided you were. Saturday on the field, the corporal barked the guard's name. Brown. Brown picked up the bat and made a deliberate mistake, missing on purpose, then shrugging as if inviting the women to laugh at him. A couple did. Kessler stepped forward and shouted in German, calling Brown inferior and the whole event American poison. Brown did not respond. He looked away, refusing her script, using. Kessler's eyes turned on the women, and Lisa understood the threat. Anyone who played would pay later inside. Lisa stepped forward and took the bat, not as surrender, but to keep the moment from turning violent. She swung and missed, then forced a short laugh, as if unimpressed. Brown tossed the ball in an easy arc. Lisa hated the ease because it felt like pity. She swung again, angry at him and at herself, and the bat met the ball with a clean crack that cut through the air. Silence hit first, then a cheer burst out, half English, half German, reflexive and unplanned. Joy had escaped the barracks rules. Brown pointed and shouted, "Run!" Lisa did not run. Her body stayed locked, waiting for the trick. The younger women ran anyway, laughing as they chased the rolling ball. At the edge of the field, the white sergeant scowled as if laughter violated a regulation. Lisa saw, in that scowl, how thin control really was, and how fast it could clamp down. Back in the barracks, Kessler slapped Lisa hard enough to make her teeth click. "You enjoyed it," she said, low and furious. The accusation hit like a verdict. Lisa tasted blood and kept her eyes level, refusing to offer apology that would make the charge true. Later, alone on her bunk, the bruise throbbed and the memory of the crack of the bat throbbed too, and the two pains mixed until she could not tell which one she deserved. Lisa bought her way back into the circle with pain, latrine detail, skipped soup, silent endurance at roll call, and the women let her close again, but with a condition. She had to keep proving hardness. Survival became performance. Annie watched Lisa's performance with a kind of disappointment that felt like a debt Lisa could never pay, because the only proof Annie respected now was action that bled outward. Then the camp forced a choice that could not be waved away as mood or rumor. Lisa was pulled into a room with a table, a translator, and a typed form already filled with the names of 3 leaders. The translator asked Lisa to confirm and add to the list. If she refused, the translator said, the barracks would lose meal privileges, and her repatriation file would be flagged for delay. The threat was not dramatic. It was administrative, which made it unavoidable. Lisa understood the choice was designed to force betrayal in a quiet voice. Lisa refused to give names. The translator wrote uncooperative and slid the paper aside. Lisa was released without shouting, and that made the cost clear. The note would sit in a file until someone wanted to use it. Back in the barracks, women watched her as if she might have sold them out anyway. Lisa took the night's filthiest work in public and did it until her hands split, buying the group a reason not to turn on her and buying herself one more day without blood on her conscience. Annie whispered about striking back again. Lisa stopped her again, grabbing her wrist and pressing hard until Annie hissed. "Don't," Lisa said. "They want you to give them a reason." Annie ripped her arm free and turned away, shaking with rage. Lisa had prevented an explosion. She had also made herself the person who blocked action, and in a barracks built on purity, blocking action looked like corruption. Then the notice board announced a concert. Saturday evening. Attendance required. Kessler called it spiritual corrosion and ordered the women to sit stiff, hands folded, faces blank. Lisa agreed outwardly, and feared inwardly because she had learned the body could betray ideology in a second, and Kessler collected betrayals like trophies. The platform in the square was built from crates. Soldiers walked up with instruments, not rifles. Brown carried a trumpet case and opened it carefully, like it held something fragile he could not afford to lose. Lisa heard Kessler whisper a German phrase she had heard before the war when officials talked about forbidden art, degenerate music, and Lisa felt the old propaganda flare in her head like a match. The match went out the moment the first notes hit. The music started bright and fast, rhythm driving forward as if refusing to stall. Lisa kept her face blank and felt her foot tap once before she could stop it. Around her, women sat rigid, but their fingers twitched and shoulders loosened in tiny betrayals. Lisa pressed her heel into the dirt until her leg cramped, punishing the impulse to move, and the punishment only made the rhythm feel louder. The band slid into something slower, heavy with sorrow. Lisa saw rubble in her mind, her mother's kitchen window blown out, her brother's thin face at the end of winter. A tear slid down before she could stop it. A woman 2 benches away made a soft sound, half sob, half breath, and then went still, as if she had been slapped. Lisa wiped her cheek and stared at her hands, furious at her own honesty. Brown's solo was clean and controlled, and Lisa watched the way he held himself as if every note had to be earned twice. Off to one side, the corporal stood with arms crossed, expression sour, as if talent itself was a problem. The sight hit Lisa harder than the melody. Brown was performing under scrutiny, same as she was. The camp was not simply teaching prisoners, it was also using Brown as proof, and Brown was paying a price she could see in the tightness of his jaw and the care he took not to show fatigue. When the last note ended, a silence fell, deep and complete. Then applause burst out, loud and messy, and Lisa clapped before she chose to. Her palms stung. The sound embarrassed her and relieved her at the same time. It was not forgiveness. It was recognition, and recognition felt like treason under Kessler's rules. That night, Kessler demanded confession from anyone who clapped, followed by punishment from the group. Confession would make the accusation true. Refusal would make Lisa a target. Lisa chose a third path again. She did not confess and she did not argue. She volunteered for the night's filthiest work and did it where everyone could see. The women accepted the sacrifice and backed off. Lisa kept her place, and she learned how quickly pain could become a daily tax. A new notice appeared. Repatriation processing would begin, names would be called, papers signed, transport arranged. The promise made people reckless, and recklessness made the barracks louder and more dangerous. Lisa kept quiet, watching Kessler and Annie, and the way both of them looked as if they were preparing for betrayal from every direction. The day before the first group left, everyone assembled in the square. No band, no bat, no ball, just a lectern, a translator, and Captain Hayes in a clean uniform. Hayes began with procedures, then slowed and mentioned the field and the music. Lisa felt her stomach drop, as if she had been caught stealing. He said the activities had not been charity. They had been demonstration, written into policy. "You were taught that human beings are ranked," the translator said. "You were taught to hate." Hayes said the camp had put a different arrangement in front of their eyes. Men of different colors working together, competing by rules, making music the old ideology had called degenerate. It was meant to be remembered when Germany rebuilt itself. Anger moved through the crowd like wind. Lisa felt used and watched and assigned. Hayes kept going, and the anger had nowhere clean to land because he was not threatening them. He was tasking them. They would go home and carry what they had seen into daily life, not as speeches, but as habits. Fairness in games, respect in work, art that did not march. "You can't rebuild a country on fear forever," the translator said. "You will rebuild with what you choose to practice." The sentence was aimed at Germany, but it landed on Lisa's shoulders like a weight. After the assembly, Kessler hissed that the trap was finally named. Any woman who carried those games and songs back to Germany, she said, would be finishing the enemy's work. Lisa heard the purity test in Kessler's voice and remembered Annie's blood on the floor. Certainty had almost killed them. Lisa could not afford certainty anymore. She could only afford choices that kept people alive. When Lisa's name was called for processing, she packed her blanket and dented cup and walked toward the gate with papers in her hand. Brown stood near the fence on guard duty, posture straight, eyes careful. Lisa wanted to speak and could not. Thanking him would feel like kneeling. Pretending he did not exist would feel like lying. She nodded once, brief and level, acknowledging another person trapped inside a structure he did not fully control. Brown's eyes met hers for half a second, then looked away, and the gate opened. Hamburg met her with broken brick and people moving like they were afraid to be seen. Her family had a room in a half-collapsed building, and no patience for stories. When Lisa tried to talk, her father cut her off with a tired hand. "Enough," he said. The sentence cost Lisa her only clean outlet. Her memories stayed inside her, unshaped and heavy. A week later, she heard children fighting in the courtyard behind the building. Her younger brother and two neighbor boys were shoving each other over a length of wood that could be a toy or could be firewood. Lisa watched desperation turn into violence and felt the camp tighten around her again, invisible but familiar. She remembered laughter on the field, how it had cut through fear for 1 second. She spent a piece of their firewood on something that could not cook food. She rolled a cloth sack into a ball and took the boys to an open patch between rubble piles. She showed them a simple sequence: toss, swing, run. She never used the name of the sport. Names carried politics, actions carried less. The ball hit the wood with a dull thud and rolled, and the boys chased it, shouting and laughing. The laughter did not rebuild a wall or fill a pot, but it interrupted the war's rhythm for a minute. The cost came quick. A neighbor leaned out of a window frame and spat. "American games now? Is this what they taught you in captivity?" Lisa kept the game small. When adults walked by, she stopped. At night, she hummed fragments of the concert melody under her breath, low enough that her father would not hear and ask why she carried enemy music in her mouth. The humming did not make her brave. It did keep her from turning fully back into stone. Years passed. Rubble became scaffolding. Ration lines shifted into routines. Lisa found work in a school and learned rebuilding was mostly paperwork and hungry children. Some parents wanted their children taught obedience and nothing else, because obedience felt safe. Lisa used what she had stolen from captivity in ways that looked harmless: a hitting game with a softball, and rules about turns and fairness. Music lessons with records that did not sound like marches. She never said America in those lessons. She said listen and take turns and don't cheat. And she watched what those small practices did over time. One afternoon, a boy refused to play with a classmate because his father had been in the party and everyone knew it. The refusal sounded like Kessler's doctrine with a child's voice. Lisa stopped the game, made the boy stand beside her, and asked him to explain the rule he thought he was following. When he could not explain it without repeating slogans, Lisa restarted the game with one new rule: nobody sits out because of what they inherited. The rule did not erase his anger. It forced him to practice something else in public, where other children could see. In the late 1950s, Lisa found an old address on a faded paper folded into the bottom of her dented cup. She had kept the cup for years, not as a souvenir, but as proof that the past had been real. One evening, she wrote to Marcus Brown. She told him she had hated him at first because hatred was armor. She told him she had feared every kindness was a trap. She wrote about the crack of the bat and the cheer that escaped the women against their own rules. She wrote about his trumpet solo and about boys in a ruined courtyard laughing as they chased a cloth ball. At the end, she wrote the sentence she could finally afford. The camp tried to make her an example, and perhaps it succeeded, but not in the way anyone planned. She did not bring home obedience. She brought home the knowledge that hatred could be opposed in ordinary ways, and that ordinary ways lasted longer than slogans. She wrote that she did not know what price Brown had paid to stand between a sergeant's anger and a prisoner's face, or to play a trumpet while a corporal watched for mistakes, but she knew the price existed and she respected it. Lisa dropped the letter into a postbox beside new buildings and empty lots, and listened as it slid down out of reach. She waited for closure and felt none. A child somewhere laughed. A radio somewhere played a tinny melody. Lisa turned and walked home. Whatever the letter did on the other side, she could not control. What she could control was the next small act, and the cost of that choice was permanent. She would have to keep choosing it, again and again, long after the wire and the uniforms had disappeared.